So, good morning everyone. My name is Lalit Soni and I welcome you all in this live session by Drishti IAS. As usual, we will be discussing Indian Express newspaper, and since it was weekend, so we could not come live on Saturday and Sunday. So, we will be discussing the important news from Saturday, Sunday in this episode as well. Okay. So, let's start. We will start with the practice question, and other than that, afterwards, we will be discussing some articles that is related to Assam road to UCC. So, you know that Uttarakhand has come up with their own state law related to UCC, okay, Uniform Civil Code, and now Assam is on the same line. They are trying to go forward with the UCC, but they are going in a phased manner. They have come up with some amendments to a particular existing law, or they have repealed a particular existing law which was related to Muslim marriages and divorce. So, we will be discussing about that. Afterwards, we will be having a discussion on consumption expenditure survey. So, there has been this survey by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So, basically as per that survey, there are certain trends which has been noticed. So, we will talk about those trends, and now these trends will be important from your prelims point of view, because this first of all this report is recent. So, obviously it is in current affairs, so that becomes important part of your discussions. And then when we are talking about trends, UPSC has this tendency to ask trend based questions. Okay, there are chances that they might not go into details of the figures, but the thing is they might ask you the trends. Okay, so that is why it will be becoming important for you. Then agri storage plan. So PM has come up with this agri storage plan. You know that in India, when we are talking about food grains, etc., there is production, but because of the lack of storage, there is a lot of wastage as well. Okay, and because of the lack of storage, a farmer has to go into the market and sell the produce at a minimum price as well. So that is why, to avoid that and to ensure that farmer gets a decent price of whatever he has produced, we are going for this agri storage plan. Okay, now Paytm's request for TRAP. Okay, so basically last month you have heard that RBI has asked Paytm to stop all its you can say operations based on the Paytm bank. Okay, now the thing is they cannot go for any transaction based on Paytm bank, but you know that Paytm has a huge user base in India, and Paytm also provides for the services like UPI, etc. So to avoid that you can say gap, or you can say to avoid that they have to go out of the business, they have come up with the new request that is related to TRAP, that is third party related operations. So we will be talking about that. So Paytm will act as a third party, and what will be the mechanism behind that, we will be talking about that. Then some news from the around the world, and there are two articles for your own read, considering the we have discussion, considering the discussions we have already done, and these articles are quite simple because they are written in the explained language, so you can go through that. Okay, so let's start with the practice question. Okay, now recently which country officially validated by World Health Organization for eliminating kalazar as a public health problem? Okay, so we have discussed about this kalazar issue, and now we have seen that India has somehow seen a trend wherein we are witnessing less than one case per 10,000 population. If we go by the same record for next 2 years, or you can say consecutively for the 3 years, we will also get this status that India has eliminated kalazar. Okay, so that was the development because of which India this particular disease was in news. We have had a discussion about it in the previous video, so if you don't if you haven't watched that, you can go and watch that. Now when we are talking about which country has already been given this title of being being able to or successfully eliminating kalazar, that is Bangladesh. Okay, we have in our discussion talked about this as well, so option B would be your right answer. Okay, now we can move further with our discussion. We will start with the first article that is related to Assam's UCC, or you can say Assam's some small decisions which has led way to UCC. Now the thing is, when we are talking about Uniform Civil Code, our constitution also talk about it. Now I would like you to answer that which article in the constitution talk about implementation of UCC by the state. Okay, so that you should answer which article of the constitution talk about UCC. Okay, because that can be important for you. There are chances that UPSC go with the article based question, like they will give you some articles and match the following types. Otherwise they can directly ask, because I remember that UPSC has asked one, right to marry. partner of your own choice is under which article. Okay, so similarly, this UCC becomes important because recently it has been, talk of the town. We have discussed UCC again and again. We know that India has one state which follows UCC, that is Goa. Okay, and now when we are talking about Uttarakhand has also come up with their own UCC plan. Okay, or UCC model. So yes, Article 44, right? So yeah, Article 44 is the one which talk about UCC. Okay, so Goa and Uttarakhand has their own state laws which relates to UCC, and when we are talking about other states like Assam and Gujarat are also planning for it. Okay, so recently Assam has made some changes in the Muslim marriage law, which you can see as a step in direction of UCC. Okay, nearly 15 to 20 days they have come up with this particular law. 15 to 20 days earlier Uttarakhand has come up with their model law, and now that Uttarakhand's law will be acting as a model law for other states. Okay, so now we can see that Muslim marriages law, there is they have made some changes, or you can say, I would say that they have repealed the law. Okay, so now Assam cabinet decided Friday night to repeal the Assam Muslim Marriage and Divorce Registration Act 1935. Okay, so that is the first step towards going towards the UCC. That is, they have repealed the Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act 1935, that is in state of Assam. Okay, according to this act, there was this person who can be authorized by the state to go for registering the marriages of such people. The one thing which is strange about this act is that in that act there is a provision that even if you are minor or if you are not of age of majority, in that case also you can perform a marriage, but only the consent of your guardian would be necessary. Okay, so that was kind of a regressive law, because at a point, or in the 21st century when we are living in, we are not promoting child marriages in any form. Now the thing is, this law has this loophole wherein child marriage can be valid but if there is a consent of a guardian. Okay, so if we see at that, so that is a progressive law now. Okay, now here you can see Uttarakhand Assembly become the first in the country to show the green light to UCC, which we have discussed. Uttarakhand Assembly matter, they have come up with their own law. Muslim constitute 34% of Assam's total population. Okay, so there are nearly 94 registrars. Under this act, there are 94 registrars. Okay, they are allowed to, or they are authorized to perform certain weddings. Okay, now here Assam cabinet made a significant decision to repeal the age-old Assam Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act, provision allowing marriage registration even if the bride and groom had not reached legal age of 18 and 21 as per the law. Or when we are talking about the law of the land, we have this age of majority for a marriage which has been decided, that is for girls it is 18 years, for boys it is 21 years. Okay, but under this law, if they are not even age of majority, they might get married by these 94 registrars if there is a consent of their guardian. Okay, now ultimately we can say that this is a progressive step towards prohibiting child marriages. Okay, in Assam. So that is a good thing. We have Special Marriage Act. We want all marriages to happen under the Special Marriage Act. Now if there is a marriage that has to be performed outside the customs, so you can directly go under the Special Marriage Act. Okay, the act has authorized the state government to grant a license to any person being a Muslim to register a Muslim marriage and divorce. So basically they are saying that any person who is a Muslim, that person can be granted an authority from the state. Now state will give you the license, and once you have the license, you can perform a marriage or a divorce. Okay, so he can perform a marriage or a divorce which have been effected within the certain limits on application being made for such registration. Okay, so a person has to make the couple has to make an application, and on the basis of that application he can register the marriage. Okay, it also laid down the scope and responsibilities of such registrars. Obviously, if there is an act, so that act would be comprehensive. They have mentioned the responsibility or duties, rights and duties of this registrar as well. Now this act is called as a colonial in nature, because obviously 1935 act, pre-independence act is there. So there are certain things which has changed by then. Now we are more and more talking about or advocating women's equality, right? And when we are talking about personal laws, they are somehow biased against women. Okay, so that is why that thing should be, that act which is colonial in nature should be made some changes, and in this case they have repealed it. Okay, so it is not in line with the today's society. Provided that if a bride and groom or both be minor, applications shall be made on their behalf by the respective lawful guardian. Okay, So basically they are saying if they are minor, then application can be made by the lawful guardians. Okay. Now all those 94 registrars, because since you have repealed the act, these 94 registrars will go out of their employment, and that is why one time payment of rupees 2 lakh will be made to these person. Okay. Assam government is working towards introducing UCC. At the same time, it is also been working on the bill on banning the polygamy, making it a criminal offense. Obviously, when we are talking about UCC, when we are talking about other laws, they said that polygamy is not allowed in India. And when we are looking at the Muslim personal laws, there is polygamy allowed. Okay. So basically, considering that Assam is going for the next step, that is to ban the polygamy. So that is also a second step, you can say, in the direction of UCC. Okay. So that is about this article which we have already discussed. Hold on. So I hope this is clear. Now we can move further. Now there is this survey which has been done, okay, that is Household Consumption Expenditure Survey 2022-23. Okay. Normally this survey is being done by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So this fact becomes important for you. Okay. Other than that, we will be seeing certain things on the slides. Yeah, here you can see average monthly rural spend is 3773. Okay. So in a rural household, monthly they are spending that much on average. Okay, in a rural household. When we are talking about urban household, they are spending nearly 6459 rupees. Okay, so we can say that that amount is nearly 71% more than the rural household. Okay, so that is one thing. So now coming to the data here, we will be talking about that. So if you want to read the article, this is a bit long article and all data are given there. So I have taken the liberty to compile it in these slides. Okay. So let's come to the slides. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation releases the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey for 2022-23. This particular survey is conducted at every 5-year intervals. Latest survey has been come up after a gap of 10 years because there were certain issues. Last time there is a discrepancy in the data, because of which it could not come. Afterwards, government tried to come up with this survey 2 times, but because of the COVID etc., it was delayed. So ultimately now it has come up after a gap of 10 years. Okay. Now consumption trends, if you look at, it indicates a narrowing gap between the rural and urban consumption. So if you look at the data, you will see that the gap has been narrowing. Okay. So that is the thing. Earlier this difference was nearly 83.9%. Now that difference has reduced into 71%. So obviously earlier this gap was huge, that is 83%, and now when we are talking about this gap, that is 71%. So we can say that there is a reduce in the gap, or you can say there is a reduction in the gap between the expenditure a person in the village make and a person who is making in the urban cities or urban areas. Okay. So basically we can say that villages are expending more now. Okay, relatively. Now rural average monthly consumption spending per person increased by 164%. Okay, outpacing urban growth, that is 146%. When we are talking about these data here, the increase from 1430 to 3700, that is 164%. Okay, and when we are talking about urban, that is 146%. So ultimately we can say that rural areas are spending more right now. Okay. Hold on. I'm sorry. So we can say that rural areas are spending more here. Now significant income disparities observed between top and bottom 5%, both rural and urban population. When we are talking about the concentration of wealth, okay, now the top 5% of the people in the strata will obviously have more wealth accumulation because of the big businesses etc. When we are talking about the rural areas, there are people who are having a high land holding, and because of which their income are more, and since their income is more, obviously their expenditure will also be more. Considering that, here there is a data which is saying that there is a gap between, or you can say there is a disparity between the people who are spending at the top 5% and the bottom 5%. So that is logical. So even if a simple statement is given about income, that is also true. When we are talking about expenditure, that is also true. Okay. Now share of expenditure on food decreases in both rural and urban areas. Now what idea here is that whenever person's you can say income is increasing, so there are high chances that he will not expend more on the food, he will expend more on the facilities. Okay, so that is been observing in the that is been observed in this particular report as well. They are saying that no doubt they are spending more, but they are spending more on the facilities and convenience and not on the food. Okay, so that is one thing which has been you can say trends are saying that share of expenditure on food has decreased in both rural and urban areas, impacting consumer price index based inflation. Okay, so you know that when we are talking about inflation, there are various ways to measure this. One is related to your WPI, wholesale price index, then there is CPI, that is consumer price index. When we are talking about the retail level inflation, that is been measured by the CPI, and when we are talking about RBI is also using this CPI to measure the inflation. Okay, now coming back, spending on the non-food items such as convenience and durable goods increased in both rural and urban areas. These two points are, you can say, correlated to each other because they are actually complementing each other. Now, moderation observed in expenditure on cereal, pulses and vegetables. Now, when we are talking about within the foods, okay, they are saying that no doubt the expenditure on the food or you can say articles of the food is decreasing, but when we are talking about within the food, the expenditure is moderating on cereals, pulses and vegetables. So when we are talking about grains and vegetables, that expenditure is decreasing. That expenditure is increasing on the other food items that are more nutritious, let's say fruits or eggs, poultry, or you can say meat. In all these food items, that expenditure is increasing, but the thing is, when we are talking about this particular thing, that expenditure is decreasing. Now on this point we will be having another discussion in the next slide, but right now just remember that the food you can say expenditure on food is decreasing, and within the food, when we are talking about the expenditure on the cereal, pulses etc. is decreasing, and it is increasing on the items such as fruits, eggs, poultry, or you can say meat etc. Okay, now incorporating the imputed cost of government provided food grains and free items marginally increased average monthly consumption expenditure in both rural and urban areas. You know that because of the PDS system, because of the certain you can say schemes, this Pradhan Mantri Annapurna Yojana etc. So when we are talking about Garib Kalyan Yojana, all these yojanas are there which are basically talking about giving food grains. Okay, so when people are getting food grains from such yojanas, obviously they will not buy cereal outside. Okay, so they are spending more on the fruit sector. So that is what is saying, incorporating the imputed cost of the government provided food and grains and free items marginally increase the average monthly consumption expenditure in both rural and urban area, because since government is providing at a lower rate, so that expenditure is increased marginally only. Okay, now here you can see the share that is related to the consumption of the food items. Here you can see in the rural areas it was earlier 60%, nearly 60%, that is 59.4%, that has decreased to 53% and ultimately nearly 46%. Okay, so we can see that the consumption or the expenditure on the food items is decreasing, and when we are talking about the urban areas, it is 48% to 42% to 39%. so we can say that when we are talking about the trends with respect to the food items, that is towards the decreasing direction. So if they ask you tomorrow related to trends in the expenditure in the food grains etc, so obviously you might think that since population is increasing, so obviously expenditure on the food grains would be increasing, but that is not the case, that is decreasing in fact. Okay, so now coming back to another article that is related to the same thing. Okay, but here we will be talking this particular thing in regard to our agricultural aspects. Okay, recently you must have heard that there is a demand of MSP being compulsorily provided for the all 23 crops, and there should be a legal backing, and that demand has been put forward by the agriculture farmers, and government are having some kind of talks with them, and they are trying to make sure that this particular standstill comes, that protest etc, they basically ends here. Okay, so here there is some things which we will be discussing which are saying that MSP is not only the solution. Okay, because the trends are saying different story. As I told you in the earlier discussion that the expenditure on the cereals, pulses or vegetables, that is decreasing. Okay, So ultimately what we are saying that whatever there is the production, when we are talking about the farmers, what production they are going for, the demand in that particular area is decreasing, because cereals is the use of these cereals or expenditure on the cereals has been decreasing, on the pulses it has been decreasing. What it is increasing is on, you can say, meat. So when we are talking about meat, there is chicken, mutton, and then we have this fish, etc. So we can say that there is a scope of this industry that is related to poultry, or you can say aquaculture, or fish farming, etc. So that is one thing. Then second is on the fruit. Okay, so basically they are saying that there is a scope of horticulture as well. Okay, so there is a scope of sericulture as well. Okay, so because people are going for the more and more luxurious life, they are trying to buy more and more nutritious food. Okay, so that is why there are chances that this particular things will give you more margins. So basically now government is trying to focus on the areas related to, let's say, animal husbandry, related to aquaculture, fisheries, and sericulture, horticulture, because they will give you extra margins. Okay, now the thing is the demand of the MSP. Now we are saying that obviously this is decreasing, and if we give you the MSPs, there will be an increase in production, and if there is no demand of this production in India, what will you do about it? Okay, so ultimately you are spending a lot of government's money on this particular thing, and then result might not be as expected. So that is why government is saying that you should go for the diversification. Farmers should go for the diversification, like not just the crops. You have to go for the animal husbandry, sericulture, fisheries, etc., because that will increase the income of the farmer. Okay, so now coming to the article, most of the things which we have already discussed, but I will give you one or two pointers here extra. Okay, this thing we have discussed already, like the expenditure on the food items is basically decreasing. When we are talking about the composition of food expenditure, here from the food grain it is shifted towards the articles of the animals and the horticulture products. Okay, so now we have seen that there is a demand of MSP, which we have already discussed. Now coming to the this particular part of the article, household spend is relatively less on the food, with rising income over time shouldn't surprise. Okay, so basically they are saying that if you are going for the articles related to horticulture, etc., there are chances that your income might increase. Okay, now here share of the cereals and pulses are reducing both in urban and the rural areas, which we have already discussed. Second thing is share of spending on the milk has increased. Okay, so we have seen that cereal and pulses it is decreasing, milk it is increasing. Okay, so that is another thing. Now here you can say same goes for the fruits and vegetables. Okay, so ultimately now for the fruits, etc., it is also increasing, because they are getting vitamins and minerals from these particular products. Okay, then eggs, fish and meat, so these are also related to your animal husbandry, and you can say your fisheries, etc. Okay, so basically these are the things which are seeing some increasing trends, these are the things which are seeing decreasing trends. So basically you can say the farm based products like cereals, pulses, fruit grains, these are seeing some decrease in the expenditure, and animal based products, these are seeing some increase. Okay, now processed food, beverages and purchased cooked items. So when we are talking about the expenditure on the food, this is another area where there is an expenditure that is related to processed food, beverages and purchased cooked meals. Okay, so that is related to, that is an effect of globalization and modernization, where we are going for the processed food. Now the thing is, if farmers are being given the proper, let's say there is a contract between the farmer and a company, that company is into the processed meal. Okay, so now farmer can get benefited out of that as well. Okay, so that is another thing, that is contract farming. You must have heard of it. Okay, that was when we are talking about this farm laws which has been repealed, that has talked about the contract farming, but unfortunately that was repealed. Now there is this Angel's curve hypothesis. As I told you in the last discussion, that as and when your income is increases, there is a tendency of expenditure getting increases. But the thing is that expenditure is not increased on the food items, or if it is increasing on the food items also, that would more on the lines of, let's say, facilities and convenience. Okay, so here let's see that income grows, household spends smaller proportion on the food. Even within the food, they would buy more superior and less inferior food items. Okay, So they are basically saying that if your income is increasing, there are high chances people will expend on the facilities and convenience and not on the food items. But if they are spending on the food items, they will go for the superior things like you can say fruits, milk, vegetables, eggs, etc. Okay, and not on the inferior food items that is related to your cereals and pulses. Okay, now they have said that in this case cereals, sugar, pulses are inferior, milk, egg, fish, meat, fruits, vegetables, beverages, processed foods are superior items. Okay, so that is the trend. And now this particular law, that is your Eagle's curve hypothesis. Eagle's curve hypothesis, this particular law becomes important because you must have heard that Lorentz curve, okay, and Phillips curve, all these curves are important. So similarly this Eagle's curve hypothesis becomes important. Okay, so that is about this particular thing. Now what is the policy takeaways? Now what government should do about it? Obviously, since we are seeing that the production, or you can say expenditure on cereals and pulses is decreasing, so MSP on these particular items which you are giving, that is well and good, but the thing is to go for increasing the MSP would not be very much helpful in increasing the income of the farmer. What you should do is you should focus on the diversification. You should make sure that farmer is not stuck to the farms only. They have to come out of that particular mentality of sticking to the soil. They have to come outside and go for the animal husbandry, or allied activities. That is, when we are talking about the farming, there are certain allied activities which can be performed on the farm, that is animal husbandry, fisheries, milk production, etc. Okay, so that can be done. Okay, you can go for mixed cropping, you can go for the horticulture. All these things are part of agriculture only, but the thing is these are some unconventional tools which can be used to increase the income of farmers. Okay, so basically that is the crux of this article which we have already discussed. This is the data you can see when we are talking about cereals. Okay, in 1990s it was 37%, that is the percentage of expenditure. That has decreased in recently, that is nearly 10.5%. Okay, so you can say that from nearly 37 or 40% to that has come to the 10%. So we are saying that the trend is not working well for us. Okay, and when we are talking about pulses, that is also decreased from 6 to 4%. Then the production of milk, or you can say expenditure on the milk, has increased from 14% to 17 to 18%, vegetables 10% to 11%, fruits 2% to 8%. That is a huge increase. Okay, so here you can say 2 to 8%. When we are talking about egg, fish and meat, that is from 5% to nearly 11%. So that is some trend. If you want to remember, that is fine. Otherwise, I would say that just remember that there is an increase in the expenditure of milk, vegetable, fruit, egg, fish, meat and edible oils. Okay, so that is the thing. When we are talking about the pulses and cereals, there is a decrease. Okay, so that is about basically your whole discussion related to your expenditure survey which we have done, and I would suggest that you remember these trends because that would be very helpful in your exams. I can say there might be one or two statements which would be related to this particular thing, because agriculture is a important topic. And when we are talking about the some reports, these reports, or you can say these surveys, are quite handy when we are talking about a certain particular section of the syllabus. Okay, so in agriculture and the economical consumption expenditure, that particular survey becomes handy. Okay, so you have to go through this particular thing. Now moving further, that is next article related to world's large agri storage plan. Now there are three articles which we have discussed about the agriculture. So obviously you can see that how important agriculture would be in this examination. Okay, so hold on. Now PM launches world's largest agri storage plan. Okay, and that would be an outlay, there would be an outlay of 1.25 lakh crore. Okay, I might not go into details of it because obviously if they are talking about storage, obviously they are saying that they are needing some storage to go for, let's say, storage of fruit grains. Okay, now recently when we are talking about India, what is the status? So Food Corporation of India, we have FCI. FCI has its own you can say storage. Okay, so one thing is it has its own storage, and second thing is it also go for rentals. Okay, it will rent from the market. So nearly, if we are talking about these two, other than that we have states have their own storage as well. Okay, combining FCI, combining states, all these storage are nearly some, you can say, 700 lakh or tons, okay. So this is nearly some 700. Now we are talking about this particular let's say storage plan. Here also we are generating the similar capacity so that we can double our capacity of storage, okay. So let's see, it will enable farmers to store and sell at the right time. Now problem is that since there is no storage, okay, so farmer has to sell the produce in the market as the cheaper price, because if they don't, it will go waste because of, let's say, since it is lying in the open in the farms, because of the, let's say, some rain or some any other activities. There are farm fires, there are animal which are entering into farms. All these things might lead to the wastage of these food grains, okay. Other than that also, you must have seen that there are various railway platforms where you would see that there is a huge amount of let's say these farm produce which has been lying over there in the open, okay. If there is one just one, let's say, one time it rains, it will ruin all the food grains over there, okay. So ultimately we are in dire need of storage, and the government has acknowledged it and they are going for this. Now when we are talking about these certain things, there are certain backward linkages. When we are talking about agriculture, to increase the income or to increase the productivity of agriculture, we have to make sure that there are certain basic infrastructure that has to be provided, okay. So now that forms the part of your basic infrastructure. There is, when we are talking about backward linkages and forward linkages, backward linkages are the things which are need or you can say they are backbone of this agriculture, like mechanization of the agriculture, when we are talking about the food storage, etc, okay. So that is one thing. When we are talking about the forward linkage, there are related to cold chain storage, and then we have this marketing, branding, all these things are, okay. So if we are going for the structural change in the agriculture, that will give you more returns rather than the farm loan waivers, or you can say increasing the MSP more than a particular price, because the thing is, if you increase the MSP and if you are not having the storage, if you are not having the capacity to buy the produce from the farmer, that is of no use. That MSP would be directly on the paper, nothing else, okay. So considering that, government has come up with this plan wherein they will be generating storage, and farmer can store their food food grains over there, and they can sell it when they are getting a good price, okay. Now coming back, a legal guarantee of minimum support price that has been asked by the farmers, which has been a demand. There are farmers protests going on. A plan to set up the world's largest grain storage plan in cooperative sectors. So now they are going for the cooperative sector, okay. Cooperative sector, why? Because there are certain models which has been working successfully when we are talking about cooperative sector, okay. Now we have a particular dedicated ministry. We are trying to move in a direction where are more and more cooperative entities which are being the base of the, let's say, changes which we are wanting, okay. So ultimately that particular storage capacity would be under cooperative sector. Now in the cooperative sector, we know that this is the ministry is under the home minister directly. So obviously you can see the importance of this ministry, why India is trying to go for such things, which we will be discussing in the next article. Now there are 11 primary agriculture credit society, that is PACs, which is been called in 11 states. For the pilot project, for the initial phase, we will be going for these 11 states and 11 PACs, where there is a storage capacity which is building over there. Farmer incurred loss due to the lack of storage infrastructure, as I told you, because they are not getting the fair price because of the lack of storage. So that is one thing that would be considered and taken care of. Emphasizing the role of the cooperatives in the agriculture marketing and storage, the creation of full-fledged Ministry of Cooperation, okay. So that has been made earlier. Now when we are talking about, initially that was made under Home Minister Amit Shah, that is for routing of non-basmati rice and sugar export on the government's account, okay. Now they are further expanding it, okay. So there is this registered entity, that is National Cooperative Exports Limited, that is seeing the export in basmati rice and sugars right now. So that is another fact which is important for you. Now coming to this article, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the plans for establishing the world's largest grain storage facility in cooperative sector. The initial aim to address the farmers' concerns regarding the storage infrastructure and enable them to store and sell their produce at the right time. That is the important key term here, okay. Whenever there is a right time, whenever there is no artificial demand, whenever they are getting the good price for their produce, then they can go for selling it, okay. Now the government is aligning farming with cutting edge technology, including digitizing payments in agriculture cooperatives, okay. So that is another thing, that is the development which you can remember, okay. Now coming to the cooperatives in as a new engine, okay. So as I told you, now we are going for the focus on the cooperative sector. So let's see. The emphasis on the cooperative is part of vision to empower small and marginal farmers and rejuvenate the cooperative sector. Modi highlights the role of cooperatives in the India's traditional and urge their modernization to address the contemporary challenges. Okay, so modernization of the cooperative, that is another thing. The government's focus on the cooperative extends to the areas such as soil testing, skill development and tax reforms. So basically, these are the areas wherein government and the this sector can go hand in hand, they can go parallel, so that there will be more awareness generation. The best when we are talking about this particular sector, the best example is Amul. You must have heard about Amul model in Gujarat. Now we are trying to expand this model to other agricultural things. Okay, Union Minister Amit Shah emphasized the importance of the computerization in the packs and expansion of the storage capacity through cooperatives. Okay, if you want to go through this particular article here, as I told you, Amul model. Okay, so success achieved by the Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation, that is Amul, in augmenting the income of farmers. Now we are trying to replicate it across country. Okay, other than that, there are certain data. Now as I told you, we have Food Corporation of India, which is having capacity of 362 lakh tons. Now along with the rentals, okay, there are nearly rentals of 146 or 147 lakh tons. These are rentals, and other than that, the remaining 214 lakh tons are basically rentals. And then state governments have 400 lakh tons of capacity, which is total capacity of 762, nearly 762 lakh tons. Okay, now with the new scheme, we are also going for the additional increase of, that is 700 lakh tons. Okay, so we are trying to double the storage capacity which has been given in this particular article. Now we can move further. There are certain things. The government's emphasis on the cooperatives reflects a shift towards cooperative based agriculture. Okay, so basically they are talking about the cooperative based agriculture marketing and storage, aiming to double existing storage capacity, which we have already discussed, that is nearly 700 lakh ton. That is our new target in the next 5 years. The establishment of the Ministry of the Cooperation and involvement of the cooperatives in the export suggests that the government's commitment to replicating success of models like Amul nationwide. The government's focus on cooperatives indicates a reliance on the sector for agricultural infrastructure and marketing, given the challenges in the private sector investment, because obviously private sector might not be interested in going in going and investing in the agriculture sector, because there are certain things like export ban is there, there are certain other regulation on the private sector, there are certain restrictions. Under such restrictions, private sector might not want to enter into it, because obviously when we are talking about private sector, it is a form of capitalism, and capitalism thrives on the profit. Okay, so obviously government cannot allow the exploitation of farmers at the cost of the profit of the capitalist. Okay, so that is why there are high chances that private sector might not enter into agriculture directly. So that is why government is going for the cooperative model. Okay, now we can move further. RBI asks NPCI to consider Paytm's request for TPAP. Okay, sorry, third party. That is your third party application provider. Okay, now what it is, how it will benefit the customers. Okay, so if it is getting technical for you, if you are reading this article and if it is getting technical, I would tell you that you don't have to go for the technicalities, because UPSC expect you to have general idea of certain things. You are supposed to be a journalist, okay, and not the expert in the field. Okay, so now let's see. RBI has asked Paytm Bank to stop its operations from 29th of February. Afterwards, this deadline was increased to 15th of March. After 15th of March, Paytm banks cannot go for accepting any kind of deposit or any kind of services related to your wallets like Fastag wallet, Paytm wallet, etc. So now the thing is, and that particular judgment of that particular order of RBI has come in the let's say backdrop of a particular thing, that these Paytm banks are not complying with the norms or the direction which are given by the RBI. Okay, in that particular sense, when we are talking about this particular Paytm company, there is this Paytm, okay, and its parent company is basically allied to a Chinese company. Okay, so there is this parent company whose name is OCL. Okay, now OCL has OCL has some links in Chinese company. Okay, so ultimately that is why that is a concern of security if Paytm is not complying with the direction which has been given by the RBI. Okay, so that is in the backdrop of that particular issue, they have gone for this harsh action on the Paytm. And this is not the first time Paytm is doing that. They are not complying. In 2018 that happened, and then 2020 they have also happened certain issues between the RBI and the Paytm. But in this time RBI has gone for this particular direction that Paytm has to stop its operations in India. Okay, that is related to Paytm Bank and not other operations, just related to Paytm Bank. Okay, now the thing is, when we are talking about this UPI interface or UPI transactions, so that is been taken care by the Paytm Bank. Okay, so once you are supposed to stop your operations related to Paytm Bank, your UPI interface will also not work. Okay, considering that Paytm has asked for an application, that is third party application provider. Okay, so basically what happens is third party application provider, when we are talking about, these are not basically they are not having their own banks. They will be entering as a third party and they will be allied to certain banks, a group of banks. Okay, and then they can perform certain you can say online transactions based on UPI. Okay, so now Paytm has asked that, they have made an application, and wherein RBI has asked NPCI, that is National Payment Corporation of India, which is basically taking care of all the digital payments in India. So they have RBI has asked NPCI to consider the Paytm's request for TPAP. Okay, now here you can say Paytm to become a third party application provider, that is TPAP, for continued unified payment interface operations, that is UPI operations of Paytm application. Okay, now if you want to go for any kind of UPI based, or you can say if you are trying to be a third party application provider, you have to take an authorization from the NPCI. Okay, that is mandatory in nature. Okay, now currently all UPI transactions on the Paytm app are being routed through the Paytm payment banks. Okay, so we have this Paytm payment bank whose operations has been are to be you can say they are supposed to be ended by 15th of March. Now if they end, these UPI transactions of the Paytm will also end. That is why they are going for the TPAP format. Okay, RBI has asked the PPBL to shut its operations by March 15th. And what is TPAP? As I told you, third party application provider is an entity that provides UPI compliant applications to end user customers to facilitate UPI based payments. So basically there are certain examples like Google Pay, you have Phone Pay, you have Amazon Pay. All these things are TPAP. They are providing you UPI payments. Okay, they are providing you UPI transactions. Okay, but they do not have their own bank. Like Amazon does not have their own bank. Okay, so they are allied with 4 to 5 banks. Okay, and these banks are backing them, but the thing is they do not have their own bank. In case of Paytm, they had their bank, that is Paytm Payment Bank. Okay, now NPCI, the umbrella or organization for operating retail payments and settlements system in India, owns and operates the UPI platform. So this fact is important. Who operates the UPI or who owns the UPI platform? That is NPCI. Other than that also, it is the body which is regulating and governing all the digital payments in India. Okay, now what RBI said, as I told you, RBI has asked to hold all the operations after 15th of March, and recently considering the application by Paytm, RBI has directed the NPCI to consider the application. Now what will happen if OCL gets TRAP approval? OCL is the company which is owning the Paytm. Now if they get the approval, they can start their UPI operations again. Okay, so obviously they cannot go for the Paytm bank related operations, because obviously Paytm bank's operations are to end by 15th of March. But the thing is, for UPI to continue, that is the another path which they can take. Okay, so ultimately here you can say that once they get the approval, they can start their UPI interface again with the help of this TPAP. Okay, now as per the NPCI regulation, large TPAPs have to mandatorily participate in UPI through a multi-bank model only. Okay, so there will be various banks which will be allied with that particular model. Okay, so there is only a multi-bank model and not a singular model that is related to your Paytm payment banks. Okay, so let's see, if ICICI has a UPI of its own, that is totally a single bank. Okay, when we are talking about TPAP, they has to have a multi-bank model. Okay, not their own bank. Okay, now how many of the traps are present right now? So there are nearly 22 NPCI authorized third party service provider or application providers. So these are Amazon Pay, Google Pay, Grow, Jupiter Money, MobiQuick, PhonePe, Samsung Money, Tata New and WhatsApp. Okay, these are certain examples which you can quote. Or so this is about this particular issue related to Paytm banks. Okay, now here what is important for you is that TPAP, third party application providers, and then what is UPI interface, who actually owns and regulate it, and what is NPCI. Okay, and there are certain things related to certain example you can remember of these TPAPs. Okay, now we can move further. Infrastructure related, there is this article that is related to India's longest cable stayed bridge opens today. So basically PM has gone to Dwarka, and they has Dwarka in Gujarat. Okay, so he has inaugurated a Sudarshan Setu. Okay, Sudarshan Setu. So this Sudarshan Setu will actually connect the mainland Gujarat with the there is this island that is Bet Dwarka. Okay, so India's longest cable stayed bridge in the Gulf of Kutch. So that you can remember, in the Gulf of Kutch, that becomes important for you, known as Signature Bridge. This is the another name of this particular bridge, or you can say Sudarshan Setu, that is Signature Bridge. It will link mainland Gujarat with Bet Dwarka island of Okha coast in Devabhumi, Dwarka. So basically you must have heard that the Dwarkadhish and the the temple, Dwarkadhish temple over there, that is considered to be a place where Lord Krishna used to rule. So basically when we are talking about this particular area, there are certain things, and when we are talking about this archaeological aspect is also there. Okay, there is this some evidence which says that the old city of Dwarka is underneath the sea now, and that is why this becomes a place of tourism as well, pilgrimism. Okay, so pilgrimage as well as the tourism. Okay, now after the Union Territory of Diu, located at Una coast in Gir Somnath. So you must have heard of the UT of Diu, Daman and Diu, you know that. Okay, so when we are talking about Diu, that is UT, and after this Diu we have this Bet Dwarka, that is the second largest island of Gujarat coast. Okay, so when we are talking about the Gujarat coast, there are few islands. One is Diu, that is basically first largest island, or you can say largest island of Gujarat coast, and Bet Dwarka is the second largest island of the Gujarat coast. Okay, at present only means of transport between the Bet Dwarka and the mainland Gujarat is ferry boat services. Okay, so if you have to go from the mainland Dwarka to the Bet Dwarka, then you have to take a ferry service, and right now they have come up with this particular bridge that will provide you an all weather connectivity. Okay, so it is a part of National Highway 51 that runs along the sea coast of Saurashtra. Okay, so that is the project which we are talking about, that has been inaugurated by our Prime Minister, Sudarshan Setu, that is between mainland Gujarat to Bet Dwarka island. Okay, so here you can see, this is the picture of this particular you can say bridge. Okay, and here a divine experience. PM Narendra Modi offers prayers on the seabed at the site of ancient city of Dwarka on Sunday. It was a very divine experience, he said. Okay, so basically as I told you, there is an ancient city of Dwarka which is under the seabed, and Prime Minister has visited there. Okay, so there is a potential to exploit this particular area as a tourism, because obviously if you provide with such services to the customers, or I mean tourists, they would also want to go and explore this ancient city of Dwarka. Okay, so that is another potential which we are talking about. Now moving further, around the world, if we see, US target Russia with hundreds of sanctions over Ukraine and Navalny death. Okay, so this is the person which was kind of a critic to Russian president or Russian regime right now, if we are talking about. Okay, so it has been nearly 2 years now to the Ukraine war, and now USA has gone for another nearly 100 sanctions or 93 sanctions, and nearly on the 500 peoples and the objects they have provided for the economic sanctions on the Russia. So that is a tactic to build pressure. Okay, now moving further, here when we are talking about the Gaza, so there was this particular peace process which is going on. You can say some talks which are going on here. Mediators are making progress on the agreement for a weeks long ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, release of dozens of hostages in Gaza and Palestinian in jail. So basically they are exchanging these hostages in the exchange of these Palestinian people. Okay, so though there is no official word, but the thing is, Israeli media outlets said that they are making some good progress in that direction. Sends a delegation to Qatar for further discussions. Hamas says that it has not been involved in the latest proposal developed by the US, Egypt, Qatar. Okay, so basically the thing is, this particular proposal which we are talking about, that is based on US, Qatar and other countries like Egypt, etc. But Hamas are saying they are not part of it. But the thing is, they are matching most of their earlier demands. Okay, so that is a positive positive intimation, you can say, in this particular direction. Israel is meanwhile developing a plan to expand its offensive to Rafah. So Israel is still continuing their offensives in the Rafah. US and UK attacks Houthis in Yemen. So Houthis are creating issues in the area of Red Sea, and they are been attacking on the various shipments. Now UK and US has reciprocated, and they have responded to that particular thing. So that is another development. Now, new Israeli settlements in the West against the international law. So basically now first time USA has said that all the new settlements which are being made by the you can say Israel, and Israel further has plans to go for building infrastructure and settlements in the Gaza Strip area. Now USA is saying that that is against the international law. Okay, so that one thing that I would like you to read this particular article. Okay, since there is a want of time, I would want you to go through this particular article. Okay, so but the crux is that USA for the first time has said that these infrastructure which is to be built by Israel in the newly occupied Gaza area, that would be against the international law. Now, measure to ease rescue operation on the world's highest peak. When we are talking about Mount Everest, you know that it is world's highest peak, that is 8,849 meters, that is 29,032 feet. Okay, in Nepal it is called Sagar Matha. In Nepali, when we are talking about Mount Everest, that is called Sagar Matha. So I would suggest that you remember this name as well. Okay, so since 1950, in 1950s, nearly since 1950s till now, nearly 300 people has lost their life in that particular area because of the harsh conditions. When we are talking about trekking to Mount Everest, there is this Mount Everest base camp, and from that base camp, that is around 18,000 feet. Okay, and afterwards there is a very harsh climate, so that is why it is quite important to go for use of technology so that you can detect the people which are stuck over there, because of the high climatic conditions, harsh conditions, and altitudes are very high. It is impossible for to take care of all the situations over there. It is impossible to go for the rescue operation very fast, in a fast manner. So now they are going for the chips, okay, electronic chips that would be installed in their jacket, so that we can locate the person over there. They can go and provide health help over there. So for the rescue operations, they have gone for this particular electronic chips which is to be installed in their jackets. Okay, so that is a new development which we have talked about. Now for your own read, there are two articles that is related to consumption survey, 5 questions which we have already discussed, but for your clear understanding, if you have any kind of doubt, you can go through this particular thing. You don't have to remember any data. I would suggest that you remember the trends. Okay, now second article is related to why Assam has decided to repeal its Muslim Marriage Act. As I told you, this is a regressive act, this is colonial in nature, this was promoting child marriages, and Assam is going towards UCC. So considering all these reasons, Assam has gone for that. So you can also give it a read. Okay, with that our discussion is ended. I would suggest you attempt this question: who releases the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey HCES in India? Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and Ministry of Rural Development. Okay, so you can attempt this question and answer in the comment box. So with that, I would like to wrap up the session, and if you have not subscribed the channel, please subscribe the channel, and the link of the PDF is given in your description. You can go on the Telegram channel and access the PDF in some hours. Okay, so with that, I would like to take your leave. So thank you. I'll see you in the next session. Till then, have a good day. Thank you.